Communist North Korea has issued a response in reaction to global condemnation from almost every nation on the planet in reaction to conducting its fifth known rogue nuclear weapons test, which of course it did underground. North Korea remains defiant because they're Stalinist communists, of course, and while countries like China, which is its only ally, and they're also communist, are saying that sanctions should not be levied against North Korea to further penalize it, the United States and its allies have a very different view and will proceed accordingly. Now, what was North Korea's reaction and how did they handle the announcement that they had illegally detonated a nuclear weapon? We can say illegally because North Korea is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This means that signatories to this treaty, the NPT, are not allowed to develop nuclear weapons. That's the reason the NPT exists. Countries that are not signatories to the NPT can legally develop nuclear weapons. Those who are signatories to the NPT and then decide to break it and develop rogue nuclear weapons can be, under the rules of the United Nations Security Council, even invaded militarily, and the regime that did it can legally be overthrown. That's the situation that communist North Korea presently faces. So let's roll the tape and see what their official reaction and announcement was, where they're proud that they went ahead and detonated their fifth known nuclear weapon.
Statement of the Nuclear Weapons Institute of the DPRK. The scientists and technicians of the Nuclear Weapons Institute tested a nuclear explosion at the northern part nuclear test ground for the assessment of power of nuclear warhead, newly researched and manufactured according to the plan of the Workers' Party of Korea on building strategic nuclear force. The Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea sent a warm congratulation to our nuclear scientists and technicians in the northern part nuclear test ground on the success of the tested explosion of the nuclear warhead. The recent nuclear test finally examined and confirmed the structure, specific action, performance and might of the standardized nuclear warhead capable of loading on strategic ballistic rockets of the Hwasong.
Now, when one views the tape, the propaganda, what passes for news broadcast, controlled again by the state of North Korea, there is no free or independent press there. In fact, there's no basic freedoms at all. Why? Because they're Stalinist communist. They don't believe in basic freedoms, especially freedom of speech or freedom of the right to protest. They don't believe in democracy. And of course, people don't have free will. That's a characteristic of Stalinist communism, the very system that North Korea is modeled after. If you look at their tape, their news broadcast, you can see that it consists of the same old tired imagery, the parading of their weapons, trying to look tough and macho, and of course the song that they go ahead and have, this choral music, which is again modeled after the former Soviet Union, which thankfully has been relegated to the ash heap of history. But this is North Korea we're talking about, a country that is dangerously on the verge of imploding. The reason it's on the verge of imploding is because the system refuses to reform itself. The leaders that are running this country into the ground, especially its dictator, refuses to reform and make the steps necessary to improve not only the living conditions of its own citizens, but to help ensure that it stays in power. The fact is that North Korea cannot continue the way that it has been. It won't work, it doesn't work, it never has worked. And unless genuine change comes to North Korea, here come more sanctions, and it is only a matter of time before its dictatorial, brutal regime, which does not value human rights, implodes of its own making, much like the former Soviet Union imploded of its own making. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton is in the news again, but for the wrong reasons. This has been a pattern with Clinton in the last 2 weeks especially. If you'll remember, folks, there have been a lot of discussions about the state of her health. The usual mainstream la-la media, which is in the tank for Clinton, let's be brutally honest about it, has downplayed the issue. But that is no longer the case. Better late than never, after Clinton had to be escorted out of the 9/11 memorial ceremony marking the 15th anniversary of the terrorist attacks against the United States and the rest of the so-called civilized world 15 years ago. Hillary Clinton left the ceremony early and she had to have assistance. She actually fainted, stumbled, lost her shoe, and had to be physically propped up as she was escorted into her black security van by the United States Secret Service. The Secret Service then barred the media from following her motorcade. Clinton went straight to her daughter's apartment in New York, rest and recuperated, we are told, and was feeling fine, quote unquote. Hillary herself indicated she was feeling fine. And then, after her doctor issued a questionable statement saying that the state of her health is fine and that she is fit to be President of the United States, her doctor also noted that Hillary Clinton is on anticoagulants. That's fancy medical terminology for blood thinners. Put another way, her doctor has admitted that if Hillary doesn't take blood thinners, she could die. Now, this redefines the definition of health, or being fit to be President of the United States. But as with so much the Clintons say, it simply isn't true, meaning you can't be healthy, but yet also be on anticoagulants. If you need blood thinners, or you're prone to blood clotting, you are not healthy. That is a fact. It doesn't take a medical expert to tell you this. It's common logic, it's common sense, it's basic science 101. Yet this is the tripe that we keep hearing. And when her campaign then tried to excuse the fact that she overheated, quote unquote, and had to leave the 9/11 ceremony early and needed help getting into the van because she couldn't do it on her own, they blamed the whole incident on pneumonia, implying that it had passed or that it was temporary. Well, to be honest, we don't really know what her health problems are. What we do know and can safely say is that they are serious. And they also seem to bother Clinton to the point where she feels she needs to cover them up for whatever reason. You'd have to ask Clinton why she constantly lies. Just a day or two before she left the 9/11 ceremony, she was going to have another cough. And what she did is she abruptly ended her remarks to the press and quickly ducked behind a cement pillar to try to hide the fact that she was coughing from the media. Media cameras, however, recorded her attempt to cover this up, as well as the audio produced by her cough. Again, it's basic physics. So, Hillary Clinton is in serious trouble for two reasons. Americans, first of all, don't trust her. Over 70% of Americans, according to polls, have rated her as untrustworthy, not because of any alt-right conspiracy, contrary to what the Clintons claim, or any vast right-wing conspiracy, contrary to what the Clintons claim. Most Americans don't trust Hillary Clinton because they have every reason not to. This is a politician, Hillary in this case, who has been nailed by the State Department Inspector General. He clearly said that she was not truthful, that she was grossly negligent, and that she violated the laws. This is the Inspector General reporting this. The FBI also said that she was reckless, that her statements were not correct, that she failed to do the thing she claimed she did. Now, how could you trust anybody who's been indicted essentially in 2 investigative reports? But yet if you ask Hillary Clinton today, she still insists that her behavior, although it was mistaken, quote unquote, was essentially the right thing to do. She also got in trouble with voters when she went ahead and said that half of the people who would vote for Donald Trump are deplorable types, and she implied that they're un-American. And that, again, is simply not true. But yet she lied and said it. Now, did she withdraw her remarks, or what's the politically correct term, walk them back? No. She just simply said that she regretted them. Well, that's a non-apology apology. Typical Clinton weasel word, Clinton speak. Remember, this is a family who became infamous for the fact that Bill Clinton, when he was president, stood before the world's media and said, looking straight into the camera and the eyes of the American people through the media, and said, "I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky." Well, we know that was a lie. Bill Clinton later admitted it only when pressed. He said he lied to protect himself, first and foremost. Gee, that's putting the nation ahead of your own personal interests, isn't it? President's not supposed to do that. And then he said he did it to protect his family. Well, what kind of protection is that when you're going to be busted and the FBI has DNA evidence against you in the form of stains on Monica Lewinsky's dress from their sexual escapades? That's not protecting your family. That's waiting around to be indicted. Bill Clinton, because he lied, was convicted of perjury and he was impeached. He was only the second president of the United States to ever be impeached. They just didn't enforce it. Good politicians that are Senate and Congresses, of course. And then his license to practice law as an attorney was revoked, and it has not been reinstated. That is the benchmark for how the Clintons deal with truth. And what did Hillary do? She stood by her man, Tammy Wynette style. She then unleashed Cheryl Mills, one of her top aides, to falsely paint Monica Lewinsky as a crazed woman and as a stalker. Monica Lewinsky was neither of those. She was a woman who knew what she was doing, but she was caught up in international politics because of what she did with President Clinton. They, of course, made her the scapegoat, and Teflon Bill was eventually victorious. He did no prison time. He was not ousted from office. He was actually kind of forgiven by the American people. And all these years later, now Hillary Clinton is back. The Clintons want the White House back, only the Clintons are not telling the truth. They're not known to tell the truth. They are the Clintons. Their record of deception, dishonesty, parsing words, saying one thing, implying another, is infamous. One could do an entire series for years chronicling all the misinformation, disinformation, and lies that the Clintons have stated. Now, what we're going to do here is we end this commentary about Clinton and show again the footage of her not doing well and how unhealthy she was. This is actually a new video clip that has surfaced courtesy of Brazilian television. This is not the footage that was taken by the Czech bystander. That's a different angle. What you will see here in this footage is that Clinton does collapse. She stumbles. You will see that she has to be held up. Why? Because her health is not fine, contrary to what her doctor says. And while she may be overall fit to be President of the United States, depending on how you define healthy and fit, we can safely say that her current medical condition is not what her campaign has falsely claimed. And this has been true for at least the past few weeks. You will remember, folks, that it was just recently that Hillary Clinton went on a late show comedy television series and famously opened a jar of pickles to prove how strong and fit she was. Yet the host of that show later admitted that the whole thing was a setup. That's the type of honesty that Bill Clinton and the Clintons are known for. The last thing that we want to say here is let's look at what she has said against Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump has his own problems. There's no question about that. He actually has more Pinocchios, according to the media and the Washington Post especially, than Hillary Clinton does. But we're talking about sometimes a close race here. They're both dishonest politicians who don't tell the truth on too many occasions. Now, in a speech where Hillary had another coughing fit, She railed against Donald Trump for saying that he advocates the use of torture and harming family members of terrorists, which would be a violation of international law. She means the Geneva Convention and, of course, the rules of war, which, again, is the Geneva Convention.
You've heard Donald Trump say he would order our troops to torture. You've heard him say he would order our troops to kill family members of terrorists. You would know that he was advocating illegal actions against our own laws as well as the laws of war.
There's only a couple of problems with what Hillary said. She didn't tell you the truth, because ever since Barack Obama became president of the United States, the rules have changed. While we officially do not torture people directly anymore, the Obama administration still renders terrorists to other countries where they can be tortured on our behalf. Well, that just means that we're just as guilty. We just don't physically engage in the violence. We have our allies do it for us. But that still makes us guilty. If I want to rob a bank and I pay a friend of mine to go do it, I'm still guilty of being an accessory to the crime, but not in the eyes of the Obama administration. Now, who was Secretary of State when this decision was made by Obama to become new official U.S. policy? Guess who? Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Now, another issue. Under the Obama administration, how a terrorist has been defined has changed, and it's not for the better. In fact, there is a cynical, cold calculation that has gone on here by the Obama administration. As I have reported before in several articles that I've written as a journalist over the years, including some at Daily World here, the Obama administration started to reclassify what constitutes a terrorist. What they said is that anybody 16 years or over in a house that is going to be hit by a drone strike is automatically a terrorist. So if you have a terrorist named Wahid and his cousin is visiting him and he has nothing to do with Islamic militantism or doesn't even support terrorism, he is automatically considered to be a terrorist if he's 16 years or older. And according to U.S. laws, which we are told are moral, we can now kill that individual with a Hellfire missile fired from a drone. And Obama has unleashed more drone strikes during his presidency than any other president of the United States before him. What Obama has done is he's moved the goalposts by reclassifying anyone to be age 16 or over as a terrorist. It drives up artificially the number of so-called terrorists which have been killed, and it artificially reduces the number of innocent civilians that are killed as well. So while Hillary Clinton is talking about Trump breaking the laws and violating the laws of war, and that it's immoral and against U.S. policy, she is not telling the truth. Because under U.S. policy, as Barack Obama's repeated drone strikes have proven, we can fire a Hellfire missile straight into a house that has one terrorist in it that we want killed, and if it happens to kill the rest of his family members, we don't care. We'll still blow up that house. And if we find out later that there are 5 bodies and that 3 of them were 16 years or older, we will say 3 terrorists were killed, even though they may not have been terrorists. And if they're under 16, we will say there was some collateral damage. See, we don't use the term murdering innocent civilians. We use a euphemism called collateral damage. So Hillary Clinton, of all people, since she was Secretary of State when this wonderful policy became official U.S. laws, has no room to talk about what Trump says on this issue. It's too bad that she can't attack Trump on valid issues versus contrived ones, that Hillary's own behavior is just as bad, if not worse.